Previously on GB Retrospectives, we covered Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, with a surprise guest. Now we're at the very end of the road with Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. It's time for us to finish our mission. You all know what's next. It's synopsis time. After the last game, it showed that Dark Samus has managed to revive herself through Samus's nightmare. After this, Samus awakens and goes to meet with the Galactic Federation on the GFS Olympus. There she meets with 3 other bounty hunters, Rundus, an easygoing and somewhat arrogant alien with chirokinesis, Gore, an intelligent and war-torn cyborg with a battle mech, and Gandreda, a shape-shifting prankster of unknown origin. They are all debriefed by General Dane and Aurora Unit 242 about how a virus was spread amongst the Aurora units, and how their supercomputer network had to be shut down. Apparently some space pirates raided the GFS Valhalla 4 months prior and gained access to Aurora Unit 313, all of which made the Galactic Federation vulnerable. They asked the hunters to deliver a vaccine to each Aurora unit and investigate the space pirates' activities. That's when the space pirate nation invaded, which meant that the hunters were instead needed to help defend the planet. It wasn't easy, seeing as they knocked out the generators, disabling the planetary defense system. So, Samus and her new bounty hunter pals had to get them running again before the mysterious meteor hit. After another run-in with Meta Ridley, they had completed their task, only needing to activate the main cannon. Well, of course, seems easy enough, right? No, because Dark Samus decided to show up and attack them all. A month later, Samus regains consciousness, and you find out that she and the other hunters have been infected with Phazon, with their bodies actively producing it. But with the PED suit, aka the Phazon Enhancement Device, it allows Samus to enter what's known as Hyper Mode. Gee, I can't see having a source of Phazon in her body being problematic in the slightest. After some tests, she meets with Aurora Unit 242, who tells her that time is crucial. Jeez, buddy, don't you think that you should, let her recover from her coma first? The big old brain tells her that during the Norian assault, 2 other planets, Brio and Elysia, were hit by Leviathans, which spread Phazon through the planets. 2 weeks prior, they sent Rundus to Brio, Gore to Elysia, and Gandreda to find the space pirates' main homeworld. However, they lost contact with all 3 of them a week later, and so the mission was given. Samus rushes off to pick up what the others started, try and find the other hunters, put an end to Dark Samus' schemes, and save her own life from being potentially corrupted from the Phazon inside her.
That was a long one compared to the prior games. Feel a little bit winded.
But let's not delay this any further, and finish the GB Retrospectives Metroid Prime Special. Various worlds in Metroid Prime 3 are certainly interesting. After the GFS Olympus, you have the Galactic Federation's naval base world of Norian, the ancient ruins of a long-forgotten race in the world of Brio, a spy outpost above the chaotic clouds named Skytown, located on Elysia, the space pirates' savage homeworld polluted with acid rain, the ruins of the GFS Valhalla in a violent space storm, and the final area of the game, Phase, source of all Phazon. This is very much unlike the other games, as you visit different planets rather than just different areas on the same planet. Granted, you could just see the ship as more of an elaborate version of the first 2 games' elevators. Still, the scope feels much more expanded than the first 2 games, if a bit linear. But an important thing is lost with theming as well. I originally thought that the second game was pretty iffy in terms of that as well, but I feel that it beats this game in that area. While the Dark Aether areas were copy-pastes of their Light Aether counterparts, they had their uses and served as a palate cleanser. These areas just don't feel right. I mean, I know the theme of the game is bleak and all, but come on, guys, levels shouldn't be, right?
I can't believe you've done this.
Back on track, rewards, like the other 2 games, function practically the same way. More power you have, more easy things will be. I don't think I need to repeat myself there, really. Backtracking is also much the same as before, albeit a lot less prevalent. Also, there's item maps now, which is without a doubt one of the most useful things to have, as instead of having to rely on guesswork, good memory, or even having to use a walkthrough because you missed a morph ball hole hidden right behind some vines that blend perfectly into the scenery. Why would you do this? Instead, you can just look at your map, see where the power-up is in general, and just look for whatever thing is out of place. That all being said, it's way too convenient for a Metroidvania. Kinda negates the whole point when you think about it. As for the stories of each world, they're all diverse. Norian is a terraformed world that the Federation now utilize for their naval operations. Brio is the home of the Reptilicus, who advanced thanks to meeting alien races like the Chozo and Luminoth, but after much war and chaos, they reverted back to their primal selves. Elysia is a planet filled with dangerous gases, so the inhabitants, the Chozo and the Elysians, created the Skytown. While the Chozo left to find a sentient planet, the Elysians stayed behind to help spread their knowledge. The Space Pirate homeworld is home to violent acid rain and is the Space Pirates' main base of operations. As one would imagine, the planet is also more corrupted than the others, as Dark Samus had it struck by a Leviathan much earlier than the others. Then there's Phase. The planet creates these creatures known as Leviathans to go out into space and spread Phazon across the galaxy. These places include the likes of Talonford and Aether, which helps explain how the first two Prime games tie into this outside of just Dark Samus. But now instead of just going around aimlessly, Dark Samus found a way to control them. This game is interesting in the sense that some of this is laid out for you to find, just like prior games, through scans. Lots of scans, always gotta have those. But it also explicitly tells you through interactions. Seeing as you get these Federation interactions a lot. I do have my quarrels with this, but I will explain that later in the video. The controls are much different in this game compared to the prior titles, seeing as you rely on motion controls. However, I should mention that the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii has this shared setup with all games. Regardless of that, going from the GameCube controller to motion controls can be a bit jarring. I'm sorry, no more GameCube controller overlord, everybody. Just pack it up. Just go home. Let me mourn. In all seriousness, they utilize the motion controls really well and they feel very fluid. Wherever you point the Wiimote at is how you angle yourself, while the nunchuck controls movement. There's also really interesting mechanics based around it, like using fire to meld wiring together, or how you can hop well and morph ball now.
You have no idea how much of an improvement this is.
In terms of combat, it's what you'd expect, with a little addition called Hyper Mode. While it utilizes your health, the sheer power that comes from it is, kinda ridiculous, to be honest. Early on, I didn't use it unless necessary due to the whole health thing. As time went on, I just started using it a lot more. In terms of the encounters, the Dark Samus one was really good, as I typically would expect. You utilize all of your tools that you've gained at this point, and you're in permanent hyper mode at this point. So this fight has no holds barred. I don't think there was really any truly frustrating encounters aside from maybe the Phazoids, but they are nothing like the frustrating enemies in the previous entries. Speaking of which, unlike the previous entries, there's 3 difficulty settings. Normal, which is easy, Veteran, which is more like the prior games, and Hyper Mode, which makes me ask, what are you doing with your life? However, like the prior games, it handles its power-ups pretty much the exact same as 2. You don't lose everything, and a lot of the upgrades are the same. The Morph Ball still has the Morph Ball Bomb, still has the Boost Ball, and it still has the Spider Ball. The beams consist of the base Power Beam, the returning Plasma Beam, capable of melting things and is required for those wire puzzles I mentioned earlier, and the brand new Nova Beam, which can shoot through Phazon plating and can pierce enemy weak points. Kinda like this! One thing that's different than the prior games here is you can't switch between your beams. They just retain their previous uses, which kinda sucks. The ability to swap beams for different scenarios was a nice mechanic, although I guess it's better than giving beams ammo. The visors are as you'd expect at this point. The combat visor, scan visor, and the X-ray visor even makes a return, although it's more so a combination of the old X-ray and thermal visors. The newest visor in town is the command visor, which allows you to utilize your ship in various ways instead of having it sit in one place for the entire game. It can drop bombs in target locations, pick up and move shit to other locations, and you can land it in different locations, making traveling easier. The missiles never really had a section in prior videos, but it warrants one here, as it receives a few different upgrades. You get your missile launcher as an upgrade, the ice missiles, which take over for the ice beam, which I still prefer by the way, and the seeker missile makes its return. In terms of suits, you have the various suit shortly, then the PED suit. that's it. Aside from the hazard shields you get on the pirate homeworld to shield you from the acid rain, you're in the same suit for the entire game. Sure, it changes color over time, becoming darker as the corruption worsens, but I still think Prime 2 shined the best in this department. Then there's the more miscellaneous stuff. You've got your grapple as per the norm. You have the grapple lasso, which can pull plating off of walls, or shields away from enemies. Grapple voltage, which lets you drain power from things or power things up at the cost of your own health. There's also the ship missiles and ship grapple upgrades, and even the screw attack is back. That rhymed, what a chime. And last but certainly not least, Hyper Mode, which has an upgrade for each weapon. Hyper Missile is basically Super Missile. Hyper Ball, which pulses phase-on energy for an AoE attack. Hyper Grapple, which is just Hyper Grapple voltage. And Hyper Beam, which is kinda cool, because when you charge it up, it fires a barrage just like Dark Samus does. And when you think about it, it's basically an upgrade from its use in the final fight in Metroid Prime 1. Just be careful. If you can't get rid of all the phase-on, and you let it overload, then this happens. Spooky. Point is, they're all fun, they help with progression, you all heard this bit twice before, so let's just move on. The visual and sound design have improved with the jump to a new console, meaning this is the best looking and sounding of the trilogy. Just compare the Space Pirate designs between the three games and you'll see what I mean. And in terms of ambiance, it's probably the best of the three. Now this is usually the part where I gush about the music, but I do think I prefer the tracks from the first two games. They went for more atmospheric pieces rather than the sci-fi feel they went with for the prior two, and honestly, it kinda suffers a bit. Sure, there's still some good tracks, but I look at the prior games and think of the great tracks they had. I could play some tracks for reference, but I also don't want Nintendo or YouTube to have a hissy fit and yeet my videos out of existence for the music I use. So one thing that's a big deal in this game is the story, so slight spoilers. Samus has to defeat her former hunter friends who have been corrupted, destroy the Leviathans and their guardians, and capture a Leviathan the space pirates were using as a ship. To control it though, you need to get a code that is hidden on the GFS Valhalla. So like the Chozo artifacts and Sky Temple keys, you must obtain energy cells, which is actually not all that bad, seeing as you don't even need that many to get the code. Once you obtain that, the Federation uses the Leviathan to travel to Phase, and while they do the epic space battle, you make landfall. Being as the planet is pure Phazon though, it worsens Samus's condition so badly that her ship doesn't even recognize her anymore. So she travels through the planet, defeats Dark Samus, then Aurora Unit 313. The planet then explodes, Phazon is wiped from the universe, and Samus's mission is finally over. In the bonus ending, she mourns for the fallen hunters. You get your Zero Suit scene, and at the very end, there's a tease of Sylex's involvement in Prime 4. And for those of you who wonder who Sylex is, he was one of the hunters in Metroid Prime Hunters. That's really it. It's very apparent that they were really ambitious with this title. It's the most cinematic of the three, it's got more characters introduced, it's got experimental motion controls that were thrown in everywhere, there's a much bigger story at play, there's the concept of visiting multiple worlds, and botched online integration with credits. However, each of these have their own problems. Some say there are an overabundance of cinematics, the characters take away the focus of being alone, which is what Metroid succeeds at, and clutters you with other hunters, troopers, and AI that don't shut up. The motion controls do feel fluid, but there's times where you have to ask, is this really necessary? The bigger story does work, and closes off the trilogy well, but in turn, the game becomes more linear. The multiple worlds thing seems like it'd be expansive, but they have their own flaws that I mentioned earlier. I do believe they had their mind in the right place, and they sent the game out with a bang. But again, it does have its flaws. Not to say I didn't enjoy my time with it, but there are definitely areas that suffered from their own ambitions. I'd have to say that Prime 1 had the best beams and locales, Prime 2 had the best suits and music, and Prime 3 had the biggest ambitions in terms of story and gameplay as well as the improved designs. But saying that is really just stating an abridged summary of sorts. I loved the entire trilogy, and that remains true. It's one of my favorites of all time. Honestly, after playing them all again after so long, I just can't pick favorites. And I don't think it'd be fair to put one game over the other. Really, they each succeeded in their own ways, and managed to win over many. Now all we can do is admire the past, look forward to the future, and hope they take their time with Metroid Prime 4. It was a great time revisiting one of my favorite trilogies of all time. But our mission is finally done. Before we wrap up here, though, I should mention a few things. First off, you may have noticed the chat that was involved in some of the footage I recorded. That's because I played through the game live. So if you want to see more of that, go check out my Twitch. I also made a collection of the entire playthrough for those interested, if it doesn't just disappear in a few weeks' time or whatever. I'm still not sure how that works. Also, I've got a Twitter for news, so you might want to drop me a follow. I'm not sure when I'll stream again, but I'll update my community page here and my Twitter page whenever I do go live. Of course, all the links will be down in the description. As for plans on the channel moving forward, I'll likely be on hiatus for a couple of months to get some more work done on Minecraft Hardcore Season 2 before its release. This special has taken a long time to get done, so I haven't gotten enough done with it to give a proper release date yet, so just keep an eye out in the future. Also wanted to say thank you to those who came out to the streams. It was a lot of fun, and it was the first time I really did something like that. And thank you for coming by and supporting the series. Hell, the Metroid Prime Special in general. It means a lot to me, and I really hope I did the series justice. Now, with all that said and done, the next time you'll see me will probably be when the new season airs. Until then, though, Goldenbrawler, out.